My name is Kara Whitfield, and I'm 35 years old. 4 days ago, the man I've loved for 6 years looked me in the eye and told me I didn't match his lifestyle, that sometimes he was embarrassed to introduce me to people. That sentence didn't just land, it rearranged something in me. If you'd asked me a year ago to describe my life, I would have said it was fine. Not glamorous, not tragic, just steady in a way I'd worked hard for. I'm a public librarian. I help teenagers find books that feel like oxygen, show parents where the early reader section is, teach retirees how to download ebooks onto tablets their grandchildren bought them. The pay isn't great, but it's stable, and it feels like it matters. My boyfriend, Dylan Rhodes, has a very different life. He's in pharmaceutical sales, the kind of job where your phone never really stops buzzing, where just one more client dinner can mean you're not home until midnight. He dresses the part. Tailored suits, polished shoes, watches that cost more than the entire outfit I'm wearing as I'm telling you this. We've been together for 6 years, living together for 4. We split the rent and utilities proportionally based on income and share one joint checking account for household bills. Everything else we've kept mostly separate. It worked, or at least I thought it did. Dylan's family is comfortable. Not jet-owning billionaires, but wealthy. His dad, Gregory, owns a chain of dental practices in 3 states. His mom, Elaine, comes from old money the way some people come from small towns. It's just part of her. They host charity galas and wine tastings and have opinions about whiskey brands I can't pronounce. From day one, they've been polite to me. Greg always asks how the library is going, like it's a quaint hobby. Elaine compliments my dresses in a way that makes me feel like she's grading them. No one has said outright, "You're not good enough for our son," but there's this persistent undercurrent, this tiny drop of disappointment in every interaction that I can't unfeel. Still, I honestly believed Dylan and I were solid. We argued about normal things, whose turn it was to clean the bathroom, whether he could stop scrolling email at the dinner table, how many streaming services we actually needed. But there was affection underneath, inside jokes, shared grocery lists, his head on my lap on Sunday afternoons while we watched bad TV. About 8 months ago, things started to shift. It was small at first, a comment about my car. "Don't you ever get tired of that thing?" he asked one morning, jingling his keys while I hunted for my travel mug. "It's 14 years old now?" 15, I said, and it still starts, which is more than I can say for me before coffee. He laughed, but there was an edge to it. "I'm just saying, you could upgrade. You've been at the library long enough. Don't you want more?" "More what?" I almost asked. More debt? More pretending? Instead, I made a joke about my Honda having seniority and changed the subject. Then it was my clothes. "You know, my colleagues' girlfriends all dress a certain way at events," he said while we were getting ready for one of his work dinners. "You might feel better in something a bit more elevated." I looked down at my perfectly fine black dress from a mid-range department store. Elevated how? "I don't know. Less Target." The word landed like a slap. I kept my voice steady. "You realize Target is where most normal humans shop, right?" He sighed, like I was missing the point. "I'm just thinking about impressions." And then, slowly, the comments started stacking on top of each other until they formed something heavier than either of us wanted to name. "Don't you want to advance? Maybe move into administration?" "Are you really okay making that salary forever?" My colleagues' partners all have real careers. Real careers. I tried to brush it off as stress. Targets and quotas and whatever else drives pharmaceutical sales reps toward ulcers. But every time he looked at my car or my shoes or my basic blue cardigan, there was this flicker in his eyes, something between disappointment and calculation. Last Tuesday night, it stopped being subtle. We were in bed, the lights off except for the soft glow of his phone. He was scrolling through Instagram, watching stories from some industry conference in Miami, people in designer clothes on rooftop bars, holding cocktails that cost half my grocery budget. I was next to him, reading a mystery novel I'd pulled from a return cart at work. He let out a little laugh at something on his screen, then suddenly said, "You know what? I need to be honest with you." I closed my book on my thumb. "Okay." He didn't look at me, just kept scrolling. "You don't really match my lifestyle anymore." It took a second for the words to arrange themselves into meaning. "Excuse me?" "At these events, when people ask about my girlfriend, I have to explain that you work at a public library." He finally set his phone down, turning toward me. "Do you know how that sounds, Kara? Like I'm not ambitious enough. Like I settled. There was a buzzing in my ears. You think being with me makes you look like you settled. It's not just the job, he rushed on, like he could fix it by adding more words. It's everything. The car, the clothes, the way you don't care about networking or climbing. Sometimes I'm embarrassed to introduce you in those circles. You know how some moments feel like they split your life into before and after? That was one of them. I stared at him. So what exactly are you saying? He sighed, rubbing his forehead. My parents ask why we aren't buying a bigger place, why we don't vacation in Europe, why we're not further along. What am I supposed to tell them? That my girlfriend is perfectly content being a librarian forever? You could tell them I love what I do, I said quietly. You could tell them I contribute to our household. You could tell them we live within our means and don't confuse debt with success. His jaw tightened. You're being defensive. Am I asked. Or did you just tell me I'm an embarrassment to you? He rolled onto his back, staring at the ceiling. Someone had to say it. I didn't trust myself to speak after that. I turned off my lamp and lay there in the dark, heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my fingertips. He fell asleep eventually. His breathing evened out. I stayed awake, staring at the faint crack in the ceiling paint, replaying every comment he'd made in the past 8 months like a montage I hadn't realized I was starring in. Something about his tone that night, the sharpness, the weird defensiveness, nagged at me. It wasn't just cruelty. It felt protective, but not of me, like he was guarding something. The next morning, Wednesday, he was up early to catch a flight for a regional meeting. He kissed my cheek in the kitchen like nothing had happened, like he hadn't peeled back my skin the night before and called what he saw underneath embarrassing. Back Friday, he said, grabbing his suitcase. Don't forget my family's coming for dinner Saturday. My dad's really looking forward to it. I imagined Greg asking polite questions across our dining table, Elaine's eyes scanning our modest apartment like it was a before picture. Wouldn't miss it, I said. When the door closed behind him, the apartment felt different. Not empty. Exposed. I stared at the joint checking account app on my phone for a long minute before opening my laptop instead. Dylan handled most of the big picture money stuff. He liked spreadsheets and projections and words like asset allocation. I trusted him. We split things, we paid our bills, nothing bounced. But trust and ignorance are cousins, and Tuesday night had made me suspicious of both. I sat at the kitchen table, logged into our joint account, and pulled up the last year of statements. At first, it was boring. Rent, utilities, groceries, Netflix, the occasional takeout splurge. Then, about 8 months ago, right around when the comments started, there was a pattern. Transfers. From our joint account to another account listed under his name only. Large ones. $12,200 here, $1,800 there. Sometimes twice in the same week. Almost always labeled something vague like household or maintenance. My stomach tightened. We hadn't had any big repairs. No new appliances, no surprise medical bills, no sudden emergencies. I clicked through more months, more transfers, more vague notes. On top of that, there were frequent cash withdrawals, $500, $700, just floating out into the ether with no explanation I could see. I called the bank. After verifying my identity and the joint account details, I asked as calmly as I could whether there was another account linked to Dylan's name. Yes, the representative said. There's a personal checking account. I'm not on that one, I said. No, ma'am. Can you tell me anything about it? I can only confirm that it exists, she said. I can't give you specifics since you're not listed on the account. Which was fair. Infuriating, but fair. I hung up and went hunting. In Dylan's home office, the second bedroom we'd turned into a workspace, everything was too neat. Labeled folders, perfectly arranged pens. His laptop was password protected, but he's predictable. His passwords are always some variation of his favorite baseball team and a year. It took me 3 tries. On his desktop, there was a folder called Financial Planning. My hands were shaking as I opened it. Inside were spreadsheets. At first glance, they looked legitimate. Charts, formulas, tidy rows of numbers. Then my brain caught up. According to Dylan's spreadsheet, I made $98,000 a year. In reality, I make $54,000. The file also claimed we had $190,000 in savings. Our actual savings, across everything I knew about, was just under $25,000. There were investment properties listed that we did not own, stocks I'd never heard of. At the bottom of one page, in his handwriting, was a neat little note. For Mom and Dad review. My throat went dry. He wasn't just lying to his family. He was using me as part of the lie, inflating my income so I wouldn't look like the anchor weighing him down. In a drawer, I found receipts that explained where some of the missing money had gone. A $300 designer briefcase, $900 shoes, tabs from restaurants where I'd never eaten with him, spa packages, salon visits that cost more than my car insurance. I took photos of everything. Spreadsheets, receipts, bank statements, every transfer, every fake number. My librarian brain cataloged it automatically, filing it away as if this were some twisted archive I might need to reference later. By the time I closed his laptop, my initial hurt had hardened into something clearer. I thought about the way he'd said, "my lifestyle," the night before, like it was a country club membership I'd failed to qualify for. About his insistence that someone needed to tell me how embarrassing I was. He wasn't just ashamed of me. He was ashamed of the truth. Saturday night, his family would be sitting at our dining table, drinking wine and complimenting the roasted chicken while asking polite questions about our life. Dylan would be expecting me to smile and play my part in the fiction he'd built. I rinsed my coffee mug, set it in the sink, and stared at my reflection in the kitchen window. I looked tired, and, for the first time in a long time, I also looked done. I didn't know exactly how yet, but I knew this much. I wasn't going to be his lie anymore. Saturday came faster than I thought it would. By late afternoon, the apartment looked like a home decor catalog version of itself. Dylan had insisted on fresh flowers, white lilies and eucalyptus in a glass vase in the center of the table. He'd ironed the linen napkins his mother had given us last Christmas, the ones I'm 90% sure she expected me to ruin in the wash. I moved around the kitchen on autopilot, basting the chicken, checking the potatoes, listening to the faint hum of the dishwasher. Every time I caught my reflection in the oven door, I had the same thought. You are about to set off a bomb in this room. Babe, did you see what I did with the place cards? Dylan called from the dining area. I stepped out and saw he'd actually printed little name cards on cardstock. Gregory, Elaine, Tyler, Monica, Linda, Frank, Kara, Dylan, and arranged them around the table like we were hosting a charity fundraiser. I raised an eyebrow. Assigned seating, huh? It just looks more put together. He straightened one card that was already perfectly straight. My mom notices details. I'm aware, I said. He studied me for a second. You okay? You've been quiet. I turned back to the kitchen so he wouldn't see my face, just thinking about whether the chicken will be dry. He came up behind me and put his hands on my shoulders, giving them a squeeze. You're going to be great tonight, okay? Just let me handle most of the talking when it comes to work stuff. My dad can get intense. Something in my chest went cold. Sure, I said lightly. Whatever you want. The buzzer rang at 5:03 p.m. By 5:20, our small apartment was full of expensive fragrances and polite laughter. Gregory and Elaine arrived first, carrying a bottle of wine with a label I recognized only because I'd once shelved a book about it. Tyler and Monica came next. Tyler in a slim suit, Monica in a dress that had the effortless drape of something with a comma in the price tag. Aunt Linda and Uncle Frank followed, loud and cheerful, bearing a store-bought dessert and zero apology about it. Elaine air-kissed my cheek. Oh, Kara, the place looks lovely, she said, glancing around. So cozy. Cozy, the wealthy person's word for small. Thank you, I said. Wine? Gregory shook my hand, his grip firm. How's the library? He asked, same as always, like he couldn't quite remember if it was a branch or a hobby. Busy, I said. We just started a digital literacy program for seniors. It's been rewarding. That's nice, he said, already turning to Dylan. We were just talking about your last quarter numbers. Impressive stuff, son. Dylan smiled, that polished, client-ready smile. Trying to keep up, Dad. We moved into small talk. Traffic, weather, the new restaurant that opened downtown. Monica asked about a book she'd heard was popular on Book Talk. Aunt Linda told an overly detailed story about her neighbor's dog. It was normal, almost painfully so. But under the normal, I could feel it. Dylan's eyes flicking to me whenever the subject edged near money, work, the future. Elaine's careful glances at my dress. Gregory's habit of directing serious questions only at his son. By 6:30, we were seated at the table. Plates piled with roasted chicken, potatoes, and green beans. The candlelight softened everything, turned our modest dining room into something almost cinematic. If you didn't know better, you'd think this was just a nice family dinner. Dylan certainly did. He was in full performance mode, telling a funny story about a client mix-up, making sure his parents' glasses stayed full, laughing a little too loudly at Tyler's jokes. I watched him for a moment, feeling strangely detached, like I was watching a stranger play my boyfriend in a reenactment. Halfway through the meal, Gregory dabbed his mouth with his napkin and turned to me. "So, Kara," he said, in that genial tone he uses when he's about to ask something less than casual, "how's your consulting work going?" The room seemed to tilt. "My what?" I asked. "Your consulting," he repeated, oblivious to the way Dylan's hand froze mid-reach for the salad bowl. "The advisory work you're doing for other library systems? The projections you two showed us last month were impressive. Almost 6 figures combined, wasn't it?" He looked at Elaine, who nodded. I let the silence stretch for a beat. Across the table, Dylan's fork paused halfway to his mouth. His knuckles were white around the handle. Elaine smiled at me, waiting. "Yes, we were so pleased to hear how well you're doing," she said. "All that hard work paying off." I set my own fork down carefully. My heart was pounding, but my voice came out calm. "I don't do consulting," I said. Elaine blinked. "I'm sorry?" "I don't have any advisory contracts with other library systems," I said, keeping my eyes on Gregory. "I work at a public library. I make $54,000 a year. That's it." The room went very quiet. Dylan swallowed. "Kara," I didn't look at him. "I'm not sure what numbers you were shown," I continued, "but they weren't the truth." Gregory's brow furrowed. "Dylan showed us spreadsheets," he said. "Income projections. Assets. He said you'd started taking on additional work. Digital consulting, I think he called it. And that between that and his commissions, you were both doing extremely well." Monica's eyes flicked between us. Tyler leaned back in his chair, suddenly very alert. "Kara," Elaine said slowly, "what are you saying?" I pulled my phone from my pocket, unlocked it, and scrolled to the album I'd created. My hands were steady now. I felt oddly clear. "I'm saying Dylan has been lying to you," I said. Dylan's fork slipped from his fingers and clattered against his plate. The sound made everyone jump. "Seriously?" he hissed under his breath. "What are you doing?" I ignored him and turned my phone toward Gregory. On the screen was a photo of one of the spreadsheets from Dylan's financial planning folder. In neat columns, it showed my supposedly $98,000 salary, our imaginary $190,000 in savings, and a list of investment properties that did not exist. At the bottom, in Dylan's handwriting, were the words, "For Mom and Dad, review." Gregory took the phone, his jaw tightening as he zoomed in. Elaine leaned in over his shoulder. "This is what you saw, I'm guessing?" I asked. "Because none of it is real." "Kara, stop," Dylan said sharply. There was a thin sheen of sweat on his forehead. "You're making this sound worse than it is." "How much worse could it be?" Tyler asked quietly. I swiped to the next photo before Gregory could answer. Bank statements, transfers, cash withdrawals. The dates and amounts lined up like a confession. "For the past 8 months," I said, my voice still remarkably calm, "Dylan has been transferring money from our joint account into a personal account in his name. Thousands of dollars, always labeled something vague like maintenance or household. At the same time, he's been telling me I'm an embarrassment to his lifestyle because I drive an old car and shop at Target." Elaine made a small, strangled sound. "Dylan," Gregory's voice had lost all warmth. "Is this true?" Dylan's eyes darted around the table, landing on everyone except me. I moved some money, yes," he said. "For things we needed, for appearances. You all know how important image is in my line of work." Gregory scrolled through the photos, his face growing darker with each swipe. "A $3,200 briefcase," he read. $900 shoes? Restaurants I've never even heard of you taking Kara to?" "That's client stuff," Dylan said quickly. "You have to look successful. It's part of the job." Monica spoke up for the first time. "You told us the company was covering those dinners." Dylan's mouth opened, then closed. Aunt Linda shifted in her chair, suddenly very interested in her green beans. Uncle Frank stared at his plate. Elaine looked at me, something like horror dawning in her eyes. "How much?" she asked hoarsely. "How much has he taken from the joint account?" I answered before Dylan could spin it. "A little over $27,000, I said. "All from money that was supposed to go toward rent, utilities, and savings." The number hung in the air like a bad smell. Tyler let out a low whistle. "Wow," he said, that's a lot more than some money." Dylan slammed his hand down on the table, making the plates rattle. You have no idea what kind of pressure I'm under, he snapped. Every time we get together, it's, how's the job? How's the bonus? When are you buying a bigger place? You think that doesn't get to me? We ask because we're interested, Elaine said, her voice trembling, not because we expect you to lie to us. You don't get it, he insisted. I see Tyler with his promotion, his fancy title. I hear about cousins with their surgeon husbands and attorney wives. And then there's me, bringing home the librarian girlfriend, who drives a beater and doesn't care what she looks like at events. The words hung there. A librarian girlfriend. Like it was an insult, a punchline. Just to be clear, I said quietly, you forged spreadsheets and stole from our joint account because you were embarrassed that I love my job and live within my means? He turned on me. This isn't just about you. It seems pretty centered around me, I said. You inflated my income, Dylan. You didn't just make yourself look good. You made me into someone more acceptable to them. I nodded toward Gregory and Elaine, who were both staring at their son like he'd become someone they didn't recognize. Gregory slid my phone back across the table. His face was carefully controlled, but I could see the anger in the tight set of his jaw. Is all of this accurate? He asked me, not Dylan. Yes, I said. I have the original files. The bank confirmed the personal account in his name. I brought this to you tonight because I realized I wasn't just being asked to tolerate disrespect. I was being used as part of a lie you didn't know you were living. Elaine pressed her fingers to her temple, as if chasing away a headache. Dylan, she whispered. How could you? He looked between us, wild-eyed. You don't understand what it's like, needing to prove you didn't settle. Everyone assumed I'd end up with someone in my circle. I needed you to see that I hadn't made a mistake. By turning Kara into a fictional version of herself, Tyler asked. By stealing? That's how you prove you're successful? No one asked you to maintain an image, Gregory said, his voice like ice. We certainly didn't ask you to falsify documents. You didn't have to, Dylan muttered. I could feel it every time you looked at her. Elaine flinched, shame flickering across her features. Silence settled over the table again, heavy and suffocating. The only sound was the faint tick of the clock on the wall and the soft crackle of the candle burning down. Finally, Gregory pushed his chair back and stood. How much exactly? He asked. I want a precise number taken from the joint account, and I want to know how you're going to pay it back. Dylan stared up at him. Dad? And, Gregory added, turning to me, I want to know what you intend to do about this relationship. Everyone's eyes swung to me. For the first time since the conversation began, I felt every gaze shift, not judging me, not evaluating me, but waiting. As if somehow I was the one with the final say. Everyone was staring at me. Dylan's parents, his brother and sister-in-law, his aunt and uncle. Even Dylan, pale and panicked, like he'd just realized the stage lights were pointed at the wrong actor. I wasn't prepared to answer Gregory's question. Not fully, but something inside me felt steadier than I expected. I don't know yet, I said, my voice quiet but clear. But I know I'm not going to make any decisions based on embarrassment or pressure or someone else's expectations. Elaine nodded slowly as if she'd been holding her breath. Dylan opened his mouth, maybe to defend himself, maybe to plead, but Gregory cut him off. We're done for tonight, he said to his son. You will call me tomorrow morning, early. The Rhodes family left in a strange, disjointed procession, Elaine giving me a soft, apologetic squeeze on the arm, Tyler murmuring, I'm so sorry, on his way out. Even Aunt Linda and Uncle Frank looking dazed, like they'd stepped off the wrong train. Dylan shut the door behind them. For a moment, we stood there in the silence of our tidy, candlelit dining room, white lilies still fragrant on the table, chicken half-eaten, wine glasses abandoned mid-conversation. Then he turned to me. What the hell was that? He demanded. There it was, the version of him I'd seen flicker in flashes these past months. Sharp, defensive. More worried about exposure than impact. What was that? I echoed. It was the truth. You humiliated me in front of my entire family. No, I said softly. You did that. I just stopped helping you hide it. His jaw clenched. You could have talked to me first. I tried, I said, for months. Every time you made a comment about my job or my clothes or my car, I tried, and you shut me down. That's not the same thing. Really? Because it felt pretty connected tonight. He paced, hands on his head. You don't get it. The pressure I'm under, what it's like trying to live up to everyone's expectations. I'm sorry, I said gently, but you don't get to use your anxiety as a reason to take money, forge documents, and blame me for not being impressive enough. He stopped pacing. His face crumpled for a brief second, revealing something raw underneath. Fear? Shame? Maybe both. Then he retreated into the bedroom and slammed the door so hard the vase rattled. I slept on the couch. The next morning, I found him sitting at the kitchen table, unshaven, staring at his coffee like it had personally betrayed him. He didn't look up when I walked in. "Kara," he said finally, "we need to talk." I sat down across from him, folding my hands in my lap. "Okay." "I'm sorry," he said, "for the lies, for the money, for how I made you feel, for saying those things about your job." He sounded worn, deflated, but apologies are easy when you're caught. I didn't say anything. "I was spiraling," he continued, "about work, about promotion stuff, about my colleagues. Everyone's moving up, and I feel like I'm stuck. And then you're content. And I didn't understand how you could just be okay with staying where you are. Because where I am is meaningful," I said. "I know," he whispered. "I know that now. I was wrong." He rubbed his hands over his face. "My dad called early this morning," he said. "He's furious. He wants me to meet with a therapist. He said what I did was financial misconduct." I didn't respond. I'd already Googled the term the night before. He swallowed. "Please tell me you're not leaving." "I'm not making that decision today," I said. He looked relieved, which hurt more than I expected. "I want to fix this," he said. "All of it. I called around this morning, found a couples therapist, someone who specializes in financial issues and power dynamics. I scheduled an appointment for Thursday. Will you go with me?" I stared at him, not because he wanted therapy, but because he'd never been the one to reach for help first. "Why?" I asked. He blinked. "What do you mean, why? Why therapy? Why now? Why try to fix things?" He looked lost. "Because I don't want to lose you." That landed, but not the way he intended. "I need to know," I said softly, "whether you want me or whether you want the version of me you presented to your parents, because those are very different people." He shook his head. "I want you, I swear." I didn't believe him, not yet, but I agreed to go to one session. Therapy was revealing. Her name was Dr. Marion. She was warm but direct, with the kind of steady composure that makes you say things you didn't plan on saying. The first question she asked was simple. "What brings you both here?" Dylan answered immediately. "I lied to my parents. About income. About our finances. I took money from our joint account without talking to Kara." "And why did you do those things?" she asked gently. He hesitated. Then, "Because I felt like I wasn't enough. And I felt like Kara wasn't enough. And that made me feel ashamed. So I tried to cover it up." The room went silent. Even he looked surprised by his own admission. Dr. Marion nodded slowly. "What made you feel that way?" He looked down at his hands. "My family, my colleagues, watching people I know succeed faster than me. Seeing my ex, Rachel, marry an attorney and move into a penthouse. My parents loved her. They still talk about her sometimes. And when I brought Kara home..." He stopped, my chest tightened. "Go on," Dr. Marion said. "I felt like I had to prove something," he muttered. "Like, prove that I'd made the right choice, that I wasn't settling, that she wasn't below me." The words hit like a cold wave. Below. He didn't look at me. For the first time, Dr. Marion turned to me. How did hearing that feel? I took a slow breath. It felt like he valued the idea of me more than the reality of me, like my worth depended on how impressive I looked next to him. Dylan shut his eyes. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "That's not who I want to be." "But it is who you were," I said quietly. The session went on, peeling back layers Dylan clearly hadn't touched on his own. His job insecurity, his obsession with status, his need for external validation that could never be satisfied. I listened, but every answer felt like more weight on a scale tipping dangerously out of balance. When the session ended, Dr. Marion gave us homework, full financial transparency, shared access to all accounts, weekly check-ins, and individual therapy for Dylan to address his anxiety and identity issues. We left the office without touching each other. That night, I sat in bed alone, staring at the ceiling, the same faint crack I'd stared at the night he told me I was an embarrassment. This time, the feeling was different. Back then, I felt blindsided. Now, I felt awake. The next few weeks blurred into a strange balance of honesty and tension. Dylan sent me spreadsheets of every account, every charge. He sold the $3,200 briefcase. He canceled a luxury gym membership I hadn't known he had. He was trying, truly trying, but effort doesn't erase impact. His parents called often. Gregory apologized to me again. Twice. Elaine sent an email that read like a confession. "I'm sorry if we ever made you feel lesser. That was never our intention. Please know we value you for who you are." But they were quieter with Dylan, not colder, just careful, disappointed. Dylan spiraled more than once. I'd catch him staring at Instagram photos of colleagues on expensive vacations, or looking up his ex Rachel's wedding album online, his face tight and troubled. Once, I heard him whisper to himself, "I should have been further by now." And I realized something. This wasn't about me. Not really. I was simply the mirror he didn't want to look into. And now that he'd seen the reflection, he wasn't sure what to do with it. 3 weeks after the dinner, Dylan came home with a hopeful expression. "I found another couples therapist," he said, "one who focuses on identity and partnership. I think it could help. I want us to be better." I looked at him, really looked. The remorse was real, the desire to grow was real, but so was the damage. "I'll go," I said finally, "but I'm not promising the outcome." He nodded slowly. "I know." It was the first honest thing he'd said to me in a long time. The night before our next appointment, I couldn't sleep. I sat on the couch with a mug of tea, scrolling through job postings for digital literacy programs, not because I wanted a new job, but because I wanted to feel anchored in myself. My phone buzzed. A text from Gregory. "You deserve to be with someone who sees your worth without needing to inflate it." I stared at the message for a long, still moment. Then I set the phone down, pulled a blanket over my legs, and whispered to myself, "We'll see." Because Dylan wasn't the only one being evaluated anymore. 3 months. That's how long it's been since the night Dylan's world, and mine, fractured across our dining table, splintering into a mess we've been sifting through ever since. 3 months of therapy sessions, calendar reminders, budget meetings, awkward dinners, and long stretches of silence that said more than either of us dared to speak out loud. 3 months of Dylan trying. 3 months of me watching. Trying to understand whether the person he's becoming is someone I can trust again. Or whether this is simply a slow, inevitable goodbye. Update 1. Dylan stuck to therapy. Not the performative version, the real kind. The kind where he came home with puffy eyes and a crumpled tissue in his pocket. The kind where he admitted things he'd shoved into corners of himself for years. He filled out worksheets about shame and status. He kept a journal. He made a color-coded budget tracking every dollar in and out of our accounts. He offered me full access to everything. The login for the secret account, the breakdown of every transfer, the list of items he'd bought during his spending spree. He'd sold most of the luxury purchases, resold what he could, donated the rest. I watched him pack up the $900 shoes, the designer briefcase, the watches he'd bought on impulse after seeing his coworkers with similar ones. There was this moment, one random Tuesday, when he held the briefcase and whispered, "I thought this made me someone." And he sounded small, not weak, human. He returned every dollar he could to the joint account, logged every correction, triple-checked every number. He was trying so hard it almost cracked something in me. Almost. Update 2. His parents changed too, though not in ways Dylan expected. Gregory called me weekly at first. Not to rehash the scandal. Not to apologize again. Not to ask invasive questions. Just to check in. "How are you doing, Kara? Do you need anything? Are you taking care of yourself?" It was disorienting at first, to feel seen by someone who'd spent years asking about my job like it was a quaint pastime. Elaine sent a letter, handwritten, shaky, sincere. She didn't defend Dylan once. She just said she was sorry for any pressure she'd contributed, intentional or not. The Rhodes family dynamic shifted. Less expectation, more honesty. They invited me to dinner without Dylan. They asked about my work without a hint of condescension. And Dylan saw it. He never said the words out loud, but I could tell. Losing the pedestal hurt him more than losing the lie. Update 3. Therapy peeled Dylan down to the frame. Session after session, he learned to say things he'd never said aloud. I didn't feel impressive enough. I thought success made me valuable. I needed her to look impressive so I would look impressive. I thought if Kara looked better on paper, I would look better by association. I didn't realize how much it hurt her until it was too late. He took responsibility, over and over, in ways that were not comfortable for him. He stopped blaming pressure, parents, colleagues, Rachel, the ex he couldn't stop comparing himself to. And slowly, very slowly, he started rebuilding something that looked like self-worth. Not borrowed, not inflated, real. But healing doesn't erase the past. And every step forward he took came with a quiet question in the back of my mind. Can I ever trust him again? Update 4. My work life changed too, but not in any dramatic movie scene way. One morning, I walked into the library and found a thank you card tucked into the returns bin. Inside was a note from one of the seniors from the digital literacy class. "Thank you for showing me how to FaceTime my grandson. You gave me back a piece of my life." I stood there in the break room holding that card, and suddenly the entire narrative Dylan had built about lifestyle and appearances and real careers felt laughably small. I wasn't lacking anything. He was. And I had spent months untangling which pieces of this mess were mine and which belonged entirely to him. Every spreadsheet I logged, every bank statement I saved, every password he handed over, it all built a quiet, unshakable clarity. I didn't need to match his lifestyle. He needed to learn how to value mine. Update 5. 2 weeks ago, we sat in Dr. Marion's office for what she called a direction session, the moment where we decide whether we're continuing therapy as a path toward staying together or transitioning into a structured separation. Dylan looked terrified. I felt calm. Not because I wanted to leave. Not because I wanted to stay. Because for the first time since this began, the choice was entirely mine. Dr. Marion asked us each a question. What do you want your relationship to look like a year from now? Dylan went first. He said he wanted to be a partner I could trust. Someone who didn't measure love by status or salary. Someone who didn't see me as a reflection of his success. He said he wanted a life with me that wasn't about performance. Then it was my turn. And I told the truth. I want a life where I never again have to wonder if who I am is enough. We left the session quietly, walking to the parking lot without touching each other. He leaned against his car, head bowed. Kara, he said softly, do you think we'll make it? The old me, the before version of me, would have rushed to reassure him, would have tried to soothe the fear in his voice, would have twisted myself into optimism to fill the silence. But this me? This me had learned something essential. I am not responsible for managing his insecurity. I think, I said carefully, that we're still figuring that out. He nodded, eyes shining. I'll keep doing the work. I know, I said, and I hope it'll be enough. I took a breath. For both our sakes, I said, I hope so too. Final update. People online often ask why partners stay after betrayal, why they try therapy, why they don't walk immediately. My answer is simple. Because 6 years matters. Because people are complicated. Because not all betrayals are about cheating or infidelity. Some are about identity, fear, shame, pressure, fault lines no one ever taught you how to navigate. Because sometimes love deserves one more chance before you close the door. We're still together, technically, but it's a relationship under review, an ongoing evaluation, a probation period with no guaranteed outcome. And I'm not sitting here waiting to see if I am enough for him. He is waiting to see if he can become someone worthy of the grace I've extended. As for me, I'm proud of the work I do. I'm proud of the stability I've built. I'm proud of the life I have. Small, meaningful, steady. I refuse to apologize for any of it. And if Dylan ever again makes me feel like I need to shrink myself to fit into his idea of lifestyle, I won't need fake spreadsheets or family dinners or therapy sessions to tell me what to do. I'll walk away with documentation, dignity, and the knowledge that I was never the embarrassing one. I never needed to be more.